Without a workflow, you might have an unorganized client experience where they may be missing information and they get left in the dark, or it's just an unpleasant experience. And there's no shame because we've all been there, but I want to talk about that in this video, show you behind the scenes of my workflow in Honeybook for my content strategy session. Habari, welcome back to the channel. I'm Keisha Andrea, your favorite brand and content strategist. And I use this space to talk about my experiences here as a multi-passionate solopreneur. Because listen, it's already one thing to have a bunch of gifts, but it's another thing to be running a business and trying to maintain the creativity in business at the same time. So I want to show you how I do that, my process of doing that, because I don't necessarily have it all figured out, but I'm taking those steps to get me there. So hopefully things that I share will help you as well on your journey. So make sure you subscribe to the channel because YouTube does tell me that 70% of y'all that watch the video, you don't subscribe. And I promise you will like it around here. So subscribe and leave any comments that you have as you watch this video down below. When it comes to creating your client experience, you want to make sure that you give the client what they ask for and you don't want to miss any important steps. And I don't know about y'all, but it can be really hard to remember every single thing that you have to do with every single client or every single project or order that you have. This is where workflows come in handy. And I very much dislike time wasted. I don't want to spend my time repeating all of the same processes, because when you get into it and you start to get more clients, you realize you're doing basically the same thing for everybody. So if you're a freelancer, a service provider, a coach, you're going to need a system. And you might hear me talk about these things a lot because the system is what pulls everything together. Being that I'm a creative, you might have gifts as well that it comes natural to you. Some of these business things, we have to develop the skills to create these systems that can keep this all together, that can make it sustainable for us. And also, if you've been looking to hire content strategists, this can give you an idea of what you might want that to look like when you go with a content strategist. So I'm going to show y'all in the computer what exactly my workflow looks like in Honeybook. It's one of my favorite programs. Without this, my business would be way more unorganized, and I don't feel like I'm 100% there yet. But this program makes it so much easier. I promise you, once you get in there, it simplifies everything. If you don't know already, this is a part of a series that I'm creating to show you the behind the scenes of my processes as a content strategist. So I'm going to put the videos on the screen so you can check that out and get a little bit more information about a content strategist in case you're looking to hire someone that can help you get your brand out there on these different platforms. And if you're a freelancer watching this and you're wanting to know how you can make your experience a little better for your client, this may also be helpful for you. And you can choose whichever CRM that you want, but Honeybook is the one that I'm going to use. Let's go ahead and get into this. All right, so you are looking at my Honeybook Automations for my Content Power Hour. This is my 90-minute strategy session I've created. I do need to let y'all know before we get into this, before I create a automation in Honeybook, I create all of the emails beforehand. One of the silliest things that I used to do, I used to make it seem like, for some reason, I was thinking that my business, in order to be professional, it had to be no personality whatsoever. So the thing about creating automations and creating those emails or going through the whole process of the workflow, if you've already done this before and you know it's a repetitive process, you want to write down every single part of that process so it can still remain authentic. And even on the other end, for the customer, it doesn't have to seem robotic to them. It's still your personality, but you're creating all the emails and you're setting up this workflow beforehand. So you don't have to worry about in the middle of picking your kids up in the car line, you get this inquiry. You don't have time to reply to that inquiry. With Honeybook, all you have to do is press approve. If you create those emails and create the workflow beforehand, it's going to send off to the customer. Same way you would say it, but you're going to create this beforehand. I don't know who said it, that we had to be the one that's had to do all the work, and we had to make the process hard every single time we do these projects that we know is pretty repetitive. We see these big companies obviously send us automations and we accept that. You're switching your brain into this mindset shift of it's time for me to do the same. It's time for me to set up these automations and set up my business like the big brands do and not carry all these false beliefs about why you can't do it. And these big companies, if we're being honest, they don't personalize it most of the times. It does seem robotic. There are companies who go above and beyond, and we should take notes from those companies. But for most people, this is your order. Here's your tracking number. Bye. That's it. You're on your way. But you get to go in and add your little personal touches like a video. I love using Loom for this, a welcome packet or a onboarding packet. Create that one time and send it to every single client. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to go into Honeybook. You want to create a new automation. Go to automations here, create a new automation. And this is how you'll start to build out that process. So let's go through this workflow. We'll get into more of that, but I'll leave the timestamps below so you can skip around this process. So as you can see, the very first thing that it does is it sends out the questionnaire. And this is after the inquiry process. My discovery call is in a whole different workflow. This is after we've done that. They've decided that they want to move forward. This is the very first step where I send off the questionnaire. And like I said, I already create the email. So we're going to look at that email. And this is their booking confirmation that this is where they've already selected their process. They've already selected their package. I have it set to be approved before it sends because I do still add a little bit more personalizations to the email before I send it out to the client. And I've already also created my content questionnaire. So all I do is click that from the link here. And as you can see, I use this for my brand photography business as well. After that, it's something more for me to move them to another stage in the workflow, which is their retainer has been paid. As soon as this is done, it automatically goes to this. And this is also something just for me. It creates a task for me. I love this about Honeybook. It'll send you a notification letting you, hey, you have a new task. And the task for me after this point, once I've sent them the questionnaire, it's time for me to go up and set up their client dashboard. I create the same dashboard for everybody, but what I usually have to do is duplicate the dashboard and personalize it with the deliverables and with the client name. So this is the time that I'll be doing all of that. After that, there's the next email, and this email is their welcome guide, welcoming them to the project, basically. The welcome video is linked here. Again, it's not going to be exactly the same thing for everybody, but I've generalized my welcome video to cover all content strategies. So this is something that I don't have to personalize. I just send that off to every single client. So we'll see what that looks like. And as you can see, I'm using Loom for this. I absolutely love Loom. I created this video 7 months ago, and I use it for every single client that I get. Habari, we've finally made it. We're here. I am Keisha Andrea, your brand strategist during this collaboration, and I welcome you. I am so thrilled. And that gives you an idea of what that would look like. I highly recommend you creating videos to touch on different points throughout the process because, again, we're talking about personalization and this just ups the experience. I always get compliments about this. This is not typical for everybody to send a video. So I would highly recommend creating those videos on that process. After that welcome email is sent, and I also send the content questionnaire as well, just in case they didn't get it in the last email. Let me go back to the email because I'm going to edit this email so y'all can see what this looks like. I tell them what they should expect, what their timeline is, what the next steps are, and then go over some housekeeping. And another additional thing that I do is I'll attach the welcome guide to this as well. My welcome guide is already here. After that, again, creating another task. This is to hold yourself accountable. Because Honeybook, one thing they will do, they will keep reminding you about notifications that you have not recognized. I love that. Sometimes it can be a little annoying, but I do love that because, again, it holds me accountable to say you need to do your part to make sure you stay on the timeline. So, this is the part where it creates a task for me to set up timeline reminders and review all of the booking details and create the client folder and the client dashboard if I didn't do it in the last step. Another good thing about Honeybook is you can set a time limit. So I'll wait about 3 days because the questionnaire is pretty heavy and there's a lot of information that needs to be given there. So I do give a little bit of time to answer the questionnaire. This is a task for me so I can go in and check if the questionnaire has been received. And then I'll wait 3 more days. And if I still haven't received the questionnaire, I just do a quick check in to let them know that their questionnaire is due today, just to make sure that we stay on the correct timeline because everything is time sensitive. If one project gets pushed back, then other projects get pushed back because I'm only one person. So that's something to consider if you do offer these services to someone. Create these points in the workflow so you can check in with them. That way, it doesn't look bad on you because most of the time it always comes back on us. When in actuality, if you had it set up to where you checked in on them, you could refer to that to say, well, I did check in with you and we were a little behind. So this is another way to just cover yourself. After that, I create another task. I have tasks all up and through this. And this is where I create the session agenda and I send that to the client because after the questionnaire is filled out, this is where me and the client will go over everything in a kickoff call. So this is me preparing myself for that call to set an agenda for the call and send it to the client. So of course, in the next one, this is letting them know that the next part of the workflow, I am sending an email to let them know that their questionnaire has been received and this is how they're going to be able to prep for their content power hour. The next stage is where I start to do my work behind the scenes. So I'm going over the questionnaire. This is a reminder for that. And also another reminder to let me know to start the research for the strategy. This is where I'm researching all the keywords, where I'm researching highly searched topics in that specific client's industry, target audience details, all that stuff. And the next stage of the workflow is the planning. And I have all of these set up to be approved before sending, by the way. I've had this mistake happen so many times with this program, and I used Dubsado before as well. I accidentally sent it out to a customer and it's so embarrassing. So you definitely want to make sure this is toggled to require approval before sending because I promise you it's so embarrassing. I can only imagine the conversations to the clients that I've sent those emails to. It's so embarrassing still to this day. This is another email that I send out letting them know that tomorrow's the day and this is based on what day we have the power hour actually set up. I usually give myself a little bit of time so I can go over the content strategy and things like that. But this lets them know that we have our content power hour within 24 hours. We automatically want to set this up to remind them 24 hours before the project date. What you're seeing here is my lead forms, and this is my lead form for my content power hours. In this lead form, I automatically have a scheduler here. Once they choose a date and time for this scheduler, this is automatically set up to be their project date. When we go back to this here, I have this email set to send 24 hours before the project date. And you can choose the project end date, when the session starts, when the session ends. It's really up to you. But I think this is much easier setting it up that way. If you do it this way, you just want to make sure in your lead form that you actually put a scheduler there. The next stage of the process is another task for me to let me know that I need to prep for the session. So I need to draft up the strategy and all of the documentation to present to the client on our kickoff call. And then the next one is reminding me of the actual kickoff call. And I'm going to set this to remind me 1 hour before the kickoff call. And we're practically halfway through. But as you can see, there's a lot of steps to this. So feel free to use this on your own. If you have any questions, let me know down below. The next step of the process here, where I send out the thank you after that kickoff call and basically give a recap of that session. And then I create a task for myself to update all of the offboarding strategy documents. So I send a onboarding packet, but I also send a offboarding packet to my clients as well. So this is just reminding me to do that. And it's also reminding me to record a Loom video to give an overview of the strategy. I also include that in the offboarding documents as well, just to give another element, because sometimes the strategy is a lot of information. It's always at least maybe like 30 pages. So that's a lot of information. And sometimes giving an overview in video form helps out a lot to understand what exactly they're looking at. I also create another task for myself to test all of the links and access all of the docs to make sure everything is working, because I've made that mistake too, thinking I sent over something and come to find out it wasn't there. So I had to resend it again. And that's also another form of embarrassment as well, because it makes it look like, did you really do it, in my mind? So just dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's, double checking and maybe even triple checking everything. And the next part of the process is where I update the client strategy guide. I create a content calendar specifically for the client. Since this is something that I already offer, I just offer this to my content strategy clients for free. And I create a dashboard specifically for them and put the details of the content strategy in there as well. They have it in a PDF doc form, they have a video overview, and they also have the content calendar for people who like to use Notion. And the next stage of the process is where I'm basically sending this off to the client, letting them know that their strategy is here, letting them know all the details, sending them the Loom link for the overview of the strategy, and also priming them and letting them know that I do offer bi-weekly coaching calls, because having the strategy is one thing, but implementing it is another. So I mentioned that there as well. Don't push it too much right then and there, because they're wanting to go over what they have already. But later, I follow up to let them know about that as well. And this next email is where I'm asking them to share their experience. So here I'm linking the survey. I'll link it there, and I'll also send them a place where they can share a video of their experience as well. And we're almost there. This is the second to last part in the automation. This is the 7th email. And this is where I do a quick check-in, maybe about 3 days after I send the strategy. I'm just checking in any questions that they may have when it comes to actually implementing the strategy, any changes or adjustments that might need to be made. This is where I do that quick follow-up. And like I said, at the end, this is where I let them know that, hey, if you are having a little troubles with actually implementing it, or you would like somebody to coach you through that process, this is what I can help you out with. And I send out the details for the bi-weekly coaching and details about that. So as you can see, that process is very layered, but it helps out so much. When I tell you it's a lifesaver, it may take a while for you to actually set that up. I think it might have took me about 2 hours going back and forth, but I won't have to revisit that anymore unless I need to update that. So another thing to note when you're setting up your workflow in Honeybook is you want to create a organization system for your client. That's what I like to do. I like to go in and set up some things that I added to the workflow. So for me, like I said before, when we were going over the automation, I make sure that my client dashboard is already set up. And I just go and duplicate that client dashboard and update it with all of the current client's details and have that ready to send over to the client. And if you want, when it comes to client organization, you also want to think of the timeline. Those things should be in your welcome packet. But you also can add that to the client dashboard to let the client see on their own what part of the process is next. Because if this is a longer or a bigger project, it helps on the experience when people actually know what's going on. And again, another mistake that I've made is being so caught up in everything and not updating the client. And in the end, both of y'all lose. The client loses because they didn't get the experience that they expected, and you lose because 9 times out of 10, that client may not want to come back. And if you do, you have to do a lot of making up. What's that quote? Trust is easy to earn, but it's hard to get back. And I had to learn that the hard way. So I'm helping you out. It's a very tough lesson to learn. So if you don't have to and you just set everything up from the get go, set yourself up to win. When you're creating your workflow, another thing to keep in mind is the communications. All of those emails, like I said, I had to create those emails beforehand. If you don't create the emails beforehand, you won't be able to go to the next step when you're creating your automation in Honeybook. The very first thing that you should probably do is outline each process of your workflow and create all the emails for that workflow. And I love using ChatGPT for something like this. You let them know what exactly each stage of the workflow is and let ChatGPT help you outline that workflow, ask them different tasks that you can have at this time to make sure that the client has a great experience. And also, you can go as far as asking ChatGPT to create the emails for you. Now, I don't like ChatGPT creating copy for me. If I'm going to get AI to create copy for me, I'm going to use Claude. And if y'all want to know the difference between ChatGPT and Claude, I can let y'all know. Actually, I think I am going to create a video on that because I love Claude and ChatGPT for different reasons. Like I said, I'm not letting ChatGPT. It's getting a little better. I will say that, but it's still so robotic and it just don't sound like a real person. It just doesn't. Like when you see somebody say unleash or unlock, it automatically dings that, oh, ChatGPT wrote that. I hate the way ChatGPT makes copy. And I suggest anyway that you take a little bit and you personalize it yourself. So if you do get ChatGPT to create those emails for you, go in, make changes so it can actually sound like you. This helps because, especially I'm a mom right now, when my kids are here, most of the time, 1 week they're with their dad, 1 week they're with me. And when they're here, I want to think as less as possible, if that makes sense. So if my business is already set up to where it's already telling me what to do, that makes life so much easier. So if you can relate, let me know down in the comments. If you're wondering how you should go about that delivery process, think about the outline that you're going to create for the strategy from beginning to end. What is going to happen at each phase? Create an outline for what the research process is going to look like. Remember, I said that there is a point in my workflow where I do heavy research. That's the biggest part of my job because I create templates for everything else, but that research part, that part is not going to be the same. And that's where I do the most work. So maybe you can create a timeline for that process to say, vidIQ, this is what I'm going to do. I also go on different social media platforms and do research there. TikTok is one of my favorites because it's like a search engine in itself. I'll go on TikTok and I'll research a niche or a question related to the client and do content research there to come up with ideas, what's performed well, and what the client can use to tweak and make it better. Think about what the session preparation will look like, what that kickoff call will look like. This is basically like your quality control. We've all mostly worked for a company that had quality control, but you are working for yourself and you are doing all of this for yourself. So this is your quality control process. You're going down the line and making sure you touch every point. That way, every project that you do, you don't miss anything. And don't be so hard on yourself because, again, this is a tedious process, but you're setting yourself up to win when you do this. It's just impossible to remember all of those things unless you have a photographic memory. If you do, I'm jealous. I forgot what movie that was where the detective lady, well, actually, it's not a movie, it's a series. She had a photographic memory. If you have photographic, you have superpowers. So when you're going through this process, just try to write everything down one by one, every single part of that process. Maybe go back and look at things that you did with previous clients and look at every single part of that process. And that should help you out when it comes to deciding what this delivery process is going to look like for the client. And the very last thing is implementing the actual follow through when you're delivering all these things. So that includes creating the workflow for the final delivery and the implementation, any check ins, any upsells into other offers related to that, any feedback surveys, every single touch point. You want to make sure you're creating those things beforehand before you actually get into creating the automation in Honeybook. And that's it. If you are looking to hire content strategists, hopefully this gives you an idea of what the experience could actually look like for you. And if you actually are a content strategist, social media strategist of some sort, you have an idea of what your workflow can look like. And I'll link the details for Honeybook down below so you can actually try out Honeybook for free. I've been using this management system for over 2 years now. I switched from another company and I love that Honeybook simplifies the process and they always have updates. They update their system a bunch of times. So you're always going to get new features and new rollouts. So let me know down below how y'all feel about this video. If this was helpful, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I am Keisha Andrea, multi-passionate creator and your favorite brand and content strategist. And I use this channel to help you be seen, felt, heard, and paid online buyers. So I'll see you on the feed in the next video. Thank you for tuning in. Happy creating. I love y'all for real.